உள்ளதலதுள்ள உணர் உள்ளதோ உள்ள பொருள் உள்ளலற உள்ளத்தே உள்ளதால் உள்ளம் எனும் உள்ள பொருள் உள்ளல் எவன் உள்ளத்தே உள்ளபடி உள்ளதே உள்ளல் உணர்வாயே. Namo Ramana. With Bhagavan's immense grace, we are commencing the dhyana on the body of the work, the Nool, Ulladu Narpadu. We are taking up the first verse. Before going into the first verse, let us recall the layout of the whole work. We find that the work is divided into Viveka, Vichara and Anubhava, the three segments. Viveka is discrimination. That runs up to verse number 22. Then from 22 to 30, we have the Vicharana or the practice, and the 31 to 40, we can take it as the Anubhava segment, the three segments of the work. We can recall that similar is the structure in Guruvachaka Kovai also, that there is investigation into truth, meditation on the truth, and finally the Anubhava. Here, instead of meditation on the truth, the heart of the work, that is the sadhana given by the Maharishi, that is Vichara, is covered in the middle segment of verses 23 to 30, we can say. So we go to the first verse. In fact, even within the Viveka, I said first 22 verses form the Viveka or discrimination segment. Now in that, the first 4 verses have a complete look at the work itself, the whole work itself once again. And we had seen earlier that the first Mangala Shloka and second Mangala Shloka, they are independent and communicate the whole meaning of the work. So we have to complete the meditations on the body of the work and come back to the Mangala Shlokas, especially the first one, which is the Jnana Vichara Sadhana, the invoking the Supreme by being that, by not being apart from it. So we go into the first verse, which runs like this. Namulaham Kandalal, Namulaham Kandalal, நானாவாம் சக்தி உள ஓர் முதலை ஒப்பல் ஒரு தலையே நாம உரு சித்திரமும் பார்ப்பானும் சேர்ப்படமும் ஆருளியும் அத்தனையும் தானாம் அவன் நாம் உலகம் காண்டலால் நானாவாம் சக்தி உள ஓர் முதலை ஒப்பல் ஒரு தலையே நாம ஒரு சித்திரமும் பார்ப்பானும் சேர்ப்படமும் ஆருளியும் அத்தனையும் தானாம் அவன். After prescribing in the Mangala Shloka, first Mangala Shloka, that Ulladala, Ulla Unarvu, Ullado, can the awareness of existence be apart from that which is, or the true existence? Ullapurul, Ullalara, Ullatte, Ulladal. How is that Ullapurul? That Ullapurul is bereft of thoughts is the consciousness bereft of thoughts, existing in the heart and is called the heart. Who is to meditate or how to meditate? When thoughts are not there, when the means have been taken away, the thought forms the I, the thought forms the means. Therefore, both the ego and the means it is having at its disposal have been taken away by saying that the Ullapurul is bereft of thoughts. So now who is left to meditate and how to meditate? With what thoughts to meditate? Therefore, there is neither the path nor the follower of the path. Therefore, to be as the Ullapurul is, bereft of thoughts, free of thoughts, is to invoke or to meditate on the Ullapurul, on that which is. That is how Bhagavan begins the work. Now, he seems to be laughing at us a little bit when he says, suppose you are not able to do this. Suppose we are not able to abide as the thought-free self as instructed in the Mangala Shloka, then the work becomes necessary. If instead of being the thought-free self or instead of being self-aware or resting in self-knowledge, if one sees the world, Namulagam Kandalal. So, if we have not invoked the Supreme Being properly as instructed in the first verse, and we are feeling how to carry out the first verse instruction, he has said that the Ullapurul, the Supreme Being, is bereft of thoughts, both the I thought and the mind thoughts, which is multiplicity. Now, Bhagavan is asking us to be that, to be bereft of thoughts as the Ullapurul is. That is the only way to invoke it. Because how can you remain apart from it, create a false, let's say, default or some fault in the Ullapurul, and then say that you are invoking that perfect Ullapurul. So, if we are not able to carry that out, when we are not able to be bereft of thoughts and abide in the self, and since we see the world, and we are seeing the world, Namulaham Kandalal, as we see a world of beings, instead of being the one being, the Supreme Being, when we see a world of beings, Nam Ulaham Kandalal, Nanavam Shakti Ula, Or Mudalai, Oppal, Orutalaye. It is agreeable or it is totally acceptable to understand that there is a first cause that is the support of, that has the ability, that has the multiple abilities or the Shakti or the power to manifest as the seer and the seen. It is agreeable that there is one power like this. Nanavam Shakti Ula Or Mudale, the first cause. Behind all this, it is indeed through that we can accept such a original or first cause behind the seer and the seen. When the seer is not able to abide in the source and is seeing the world, Namulaham Kandalal, Nanavam Shakti Ula, that power of the first cause is of such nature that has so many different powers that it has manifested as both the seer and the seen. The seen, of course, being the multiplicity of phenomena and the individuals that we see. Nanavam Shakti Ula Or Mudalai Oppal Oruthalai. It is indeed agreeable to have one first cause behind this seer and the seen. Namulaham Kandalal Nanavam Shakti Ula Or Mudalai Oppal Oruthalai. Namuvaru Sittiramu. This scene is described as the picture of names and forms. Namavaru Sittiramu Parpanam. The one who is seeing the picture. Ser Padamu. The screen on which the strange picture of seer and seen simultaneously appearing on the screen. What is the nature of the screen? The nature of the screen is that both the seen as well as the seer. In the normal cinema, the example that is given by Bhagavan, the seer is in a seat away from the screen on which the picture is projected. But in this picture, towards which some of the scientists are moving, that the world itself could be a holographic presentation. They are moving towards that quite scientifically, without any gaps in their inquiry. Many of the scientists are moving towards that this whole picture that we see could be a holographic picture. In hologram, each of the bits of the hologram has the whole data about the whole picture in it. So that is how the projection of the 3D happens. So they are slowly coming to that feeling that the data could be on the edge or periphery of a black hole, and through the radiation, this whole holographic image may have been projected. Still, it is in the nascent stages of inquiry. But they are having some idea about what Bhagavan is saying here, that Namavuru Sittiramum Parpanum Serpadamum. Serpadam is the screen on which this show of seer and seen is displayed. Aroliyum. Aroli is that R means it is the permeating nature, that which passes through. So that light which passes through and reveals the screen and the picture, Aroliyum Attanayam Tanam Havan. All these are the self only, the thought-free self only, which we have referred to in the first Mangala Shloka. To sum it up, there are just two parts in this verse. The first is Namulaham Kandalal Nanavam Shakti Ula Or Mudale Oppal Urutalaye. As instead of abiding in the thought-free self, we are now seeing a world of multiplicity. It is indeed to be accepted that there is a first cause that is the support of, or that has manifested as, both the seer and the seen. Then the description of that, how this has happened, is Namavuru Sittiramu. The names and forms which form the seen, Parpanum, the one who is seeing the picture of names and forms, Serpadamum, the screen on which the strange picture of seer together with seen being displayed is being shown. Arolium, and that light, the Param, the Ishvara, the light which reveals, which permeates and reveals the individual, the names and forms, and the screen on which the picture is shown. All these, the four different categories, as we can say, the picture of names and forms, the individual who is seeing the names and forms, the screen on which the picture of seer and seen is being displayed, and the permeating light which not only permeates but also reveals the whole picture for the seer to see and engage in. All these are nothing but the thought-free self, says Bhagavan. So that is the meaning of this first verse. As we see this multiplicity of names and forms, it is indeed agreeable that we all agree on a first cause that has manifested as the seer and the seen, the picture of names and forms, the seer, the screen on which the picture is displayed, and the light, the permeating light, which reveals the picture, are all nothing but the self. That is the meaning of the verse. Now, interestingly, Bhagavan has used the word first cause. There must be agreed upon a first cause. We find the use of the word first cause even in philosophy, even in the study of philosophy. Now, a little bit of look, because we are thinking of Atma Ucharam and Bhagavan's teachings in our day-to-day life, and what our children learn, and the rules and laws based on which we attend to society today are driven by those philosophies. A little bit of look and linkage with Bhagavan's teachings in a simple way. up to which point they come. Of course, Socrates is supposed to have, quite agreeable to Bhagavan, supposed to have said that, I know that I do not know. But the later philosophers, on whose teachings the current society, the jurisprudence, the laws by which we live, and the education system are formed, are more or less subsequent to the modern philosopher called Immanuel Kant, and the last of probably the medieval philosophers, that is Descartes. So I have just taken those two since they have been the only people I have inquired into. So conveniently, I have seen up to which point they go. Let me try to share and how they come upon first cause. I have sent you the link of Descartes and also the thoughts of Kant on this. How Descartes comes to the source or the first cause of the seer and the seen is that he comes to the point that now in the waking state, I am there, I think, and the waking state is there. In dream, this waking state becomes false, and all the worlds I have in the dream become false in the waking state. So, but one thing is common between the waking state and dream, which is the I think. In dream also, I think, I exist, I think. In waking also, I exist, I think. Therefore, I think, therefore I am, is the fundamental first cause that he arrives at. I think, therefore I am. Now, before we go into Kant and then see how Bhagavan goes into another plane altogether, when this was told to Bhagavan about Descartes, that I think, therefore I am, because I think is common to both waking state and dream state. The things change. The whole of waking state may be governed by a demon, he says. I do not know. But let it be that let the whole dream state be wrong. But that doesn't matter. What is the truth underlying both the states? If I hold that, that's enough. The truth is that I think is there as the underlying principle of both waking state and dream state. Already he has moved to that I, which is common to all the beings. We can feel that because he has gone to the I think common to the waking state and dream state. And he says, whether the whole world is made by a reliable God or an unreliable demon, it doesn't matter that because it's not going to be true. What is true is I think, therefore I will hold on to that. From there he builds his philosophy. Kant, of course, has some difference with Descartes because he doesn't say that he doesn't agree that the I am lends any meaning to the whole discussion. He doesn't want to go there. He just wants to restrict himself to I think. But still we can understand that covers the waking and the dream state. That he keeps the I think and he says whatever state the jiva has, this I think has to be there. This is what Bhagavan says, that whether the second and the third persons and the objects appear only after the first person appears. That is one of the facts that Bhagavan uses in Ulladu Narpadu, but Bhagavan doesn't stop there. We just see up to which point the philosophers come and why they don't go into the other state of deep sleep where Bhagavan goes. So let us take ourselves to that point. This must be clear that they come to up to the dream and take the underlying I think because they want to draw some empirical laws relating to the waking state and deliver those laws in terms of judgment, in terms of law, in terms of moral ethics, in terms of judgment of aesthetics like art. They want to derive those laws, so they don't want to go into deep sleep because they feel from there they cannot make any logical support to their laws. This is their feeling. I hope you are with me up to this point, that they come up to this, which is quite significant to understand that the children who go to the modern schools, they can be brought up to that point of Bhagavan's teaching that I think is common to both waking and dream. And Bhagavan says dream becomes false in waking, waking becomes false in dream. But Bhagavan goes one step further. He says that In deep sleep, you exist even without the I think. Neither the I nor the thing is there, but you exist. Nobody denies their existence. Not the thinking power. To Bhagavan, the thinking power is not the first cause. To Bhagavan, the being, the existence, that which is, even in deep sleep, that is the first cause. Let's go into that a bit slowly. So, Bhagavan, of course, how Sivaprakash Pillai says that all of us identify with Jivatva in the waking state, and the world also arises along with us. And in the deep sleep, we also become Mithya, and the world also becomes Mithya. Now, this is the point where they have trouble. They have trouble because they want to retain some form of individuality, but it's not our scope to go into that. And how Bhagavan covers that and still leaves the connection for developing our laws and having those going to schools, offices, how they can do Atma Vicharam. We are just going to see that connection. Namulagam Kandalal. Anybody who is seeing the world must be able to do Atma Vicharam. We'll come to that a bit slowly. That they have come up to the point of waking and dream and take the underlying I think as the principle. But Bhagavan goes to deep sleep. In deep sleep, both the waking and dream are false, are not present. And the I think, which the Western philosophers have come and feel as a necessity for their drawing of empirical laws, that is also not there. But even there, we have not become absent. And in many of the talks, again and again, Bhagavan would repeat this. In one of the talks, one of the persons will say, but when I am sleeping, the other people are awake, are they not? Then Bhagavan will say, do they come and give you this proof in your sleep? When you are sleeping, when you have in that state of consciousness, are they able to come and you have come back to waking state and you are giving the proof in the waking state? But if they have to prove that they were present in the deep sleep, when your consciousness was at that level, they have to come into your deep sleep and prove. So have they proved that? No. Therefore, the world does not exist in deep sleep, but you exist. Now, the whole of Bhagavan's preamble to Who Am I comes and ends like this, that each of the jivas is in their natural happiness when they go to the sleep where there is no mind. So, to realize that happiness, which is our very nature, which is present in deep sleep, one has to know oneself. One has to know oneself as one is. That is bereft of thought. As one really is, bereft of thought, free of thought, one should know that. Then one realizes the happiness one was in deep sleep unconsciously. We can go about it a bit slowly. Because we have covered it once, I am going into this area. That in deep sleep, what was there? There was no mind, says Bhagavan. And what is he asking us to do? In the vichara that we have seen in those verses in our first round, in our vichara, what he makes us do, he doesn't ask us to engage the senses. He asks us to observe the thoughts, means you have to cut down the senses. That means from the waking state, we come to conscious dream. Conscious dream means the forms and names that come free of the indriyas. So when the thoughts arise, now we are looking at the dream state. Now I think of the waking state is not taken support of. Now I think of the dream state is there. So as we let go of thought, as thoughts arise, let go of thought. For whom is this thought? Who am I? We are holding the I of the deep sleep. That is bereft of thought. That means we are realizing that I which is present in the deep sleep. The pure I, bereft of thoughts, although with bhava bala, with the effort of the jiva, we are holding on to the I that was present in the deep sleep, that is present in the, or we are bringing deep sleep into the waking. And there is this existence, there is this consciousness, there is this Purana, I, which has transcended the waking, dream and deep sleep. Nama uru sittiramum, parpanum, serpadamum, aroliyum, Athanayam Tanam Avan. This Purana, the Aroli can stand alone. It is beyond the name and form present in waking or dream, and it finally subsides into the self. That is how the teachings of Bhagavan, it transcends the teachings on which our modern day-to-day living takes support from. That is the philosophies of Descartes and Immanuel Kant. If you go to modern jurisprudence, you will find all of Kant's moral philosophy a bit tampered here or there, modified here or there. That's what we have in our whole jurisprudence. That means the political structure, the judicial structure that we have is all based on his teachings. The modern scientific inquiry, you will find that it is related to up to the point of I do not know. If you take psychology, a little bit of deep sleep they will come. We'll go into that a little bit later if time permits. But now we come to the point where how Bhagavan transcends all the three states. Now, is there support for our day-to-day living? Now we continue. Bhagavan doesn't ask us to go off to any particular state related to the outside circumstances. He doesn't ask us to isolate ourselves. So therefore, he is giving us that the self is available irrespective of the role Prarabdha has given us. What role the destiny has brought us and wants us to have, wants the body to have, wants the ego to play, that is not taken away by Bhagavan. But he says, whatever may be the Prarabdha, has the self gone anywhere? And can it deny that it is not there? Therefore, you go for that, says Bhagavan. Now, what is the support that he gives, which the Westerners have missed out? The support he gives is of this Purana, which is common in Indian philosophy. It is called as Akhanda Akara Vritti. This Akhanda Akara Vritti is not something that they take support of, that it can remain alone by itself away from the Triputi. The Triputi being the picture show, the seer and the seen and the act of seeing. Now, another way of looking at that is the dyads and the triads. Let's say the dyad of good and bad is there. What happens is that the good and bad is in the jiva. It's not there out in the world, in the sensory world. It is there in us. But we envelop the world in good and bad. By projecting it, we envelop the world in good and bad. We envelop the world in right and wrong. We envelop the world in the search for first cause. That may not be there in the animal, that may not be there in the stone, but that is there within us. That this search for the first cause is there. The search for what is right, what is wrong, how to hold the right, why we should not go into the wrong. All this is there inside us. And that casts a shadow on the sensory world. If we have a feel for this, that the sensory world is there and we cast these dyads onto them, then it is easy to understand that when we go into ourselves, where we go beyond the mind, automatically this enveloping of the world in the shadow of ignorance is drawn back. Now, even though they accompany the Indian teachings up to this point, they find it difficult to reconcile that this whole solid world is now contained within us, is now contained within consciousness. They still retain the division between mind and the world, and they struggle in that duality. So that's up to them. That's not for us to worry about. In Bhagavan's teachings, the whole world arises only with the arising of thought. So therefore, this whole world is nothing but a form of thought. In fact, the whole world, since all thoughts are permeated by the I thought, the whole world is only an expansion of the I thought. So when we ask for whom is this, all that is now being like the whole seven seas put into the kamandalu of a rishi. All these outside experiences are now gathered together and put into that I thought, which is now taken to the source. So coming back to the connection that Bhagavan gives, this Purana, the Akhandakara Vritti which is there, which can stand alone. It doesn't need the Triputi. How he communicates this? They appear to have created all the laws of jurisprudence, ethics, the appreciation of art and all that. In fact, Bhagavan covers all that in the one sentence which he puts in the who am I, by saying that பிறருக்கு கொடுப்பதெல்லாம் உனக்கே கொடுத்து கொள்கிறாய். Whatever you give to others, you are giving to yourself only. All ethics, the best form of ethics that they come up to, which they use in various segments, is do unto others as you would have them do unto you. That is called as golden rule of ethics. That philosophy is applied across the board to all the teachings. You will find that Bhagavan's rule of ethics is diamond rule of ethics, which includes the golden rule. Because obviously one who takes care of Bhagavan's rule of ethics will easily understand what the rule of ethics in this world is. Why we should stop at the red light, why we should treat our neighbor as we treat ourselves. That becomes very clear if we understand Bhagavan's rule of ethics. In Bhagavan's rule of ethics, since the Akhanda Akara Vritti can stand alone, since the Mayaham can stand alone, since the Aham of God does not know Idam, does not have the other, whatever you give to others, you are giving to yourself only. I used to easily get away with my explanation of this by saying that now I should speak the truth. Because whatever is true to me, they are enunciated as, they arise as thought inside me. Now, if I utter any falsity, my return journey to the source will be blocked. Therefore, before I am giving to others, I am giving it to myself, and in much more potent form, because that is thought. This is, if somebody doesn't listen, then they may escape. If somebody has just put on the screen and gone off to their work, which I do sometimes in the morning satsang, now then they can escape the, they are not now susceptible to whatever I say. But I am susceptible to what I say. To the listener, there is this option of not understanding, not listening, or just looking away. But to the speaker, it is not there. Therefore, Bhagavan's rule of ethics is totally applicable to everyone. பிறருக்கு கொடுப்பதெல்லாம் உனக்கே கொடுத்து கொள்கிறாய். I was sharing with my mother an incident in my childhood days. I must have heard somewhere that they had this practice of putting the spoon in the heat and then applying it to. I was wild with my mother over something. Maybe she didn't make some sweet or something. So I said, I am going to put sudu for you. I am sudu podapare. I must have heard it somewhere. So, but I was worried that she may get injured. So what I would do, I'll put the spoon or that ilippu karandi in the stove. 2 seconds, then I will first put it on my hand and then put it on her. But one time I had left it too much, I think, one iteration. So that burnt me really, and I dropped the spoon, and that was the end of that activity. But Bhagavan says that's what we are doing each time. Whatever we are giving to others, we are giving to ourselves. Therefore, the feeling that Kant and Descartes and the others, they have, that going into the deep sleep makes them incapable of coming back to day-to-day living and empirical application, that's where they hesitate. And that's where Bhagavan says, God who is present in deep sleep, the first cause which is present in the deep sleep, is the Adhara for everything. To what extent? Is the Adhara to the atheist also. Whether he believes in God or not, there are so many atheists who have come to Bhagavan, but quite serious in their quest. They say that to my knowledge, God is not there, but they are serious in knowing the truth, and truth is God. And they are supported by Bhagavan. They ask whether you believe in God or not, how does it matter? Whether you believe that there is a first cause or not, how does it matter? Do you believe you exist? You'll say, yes, yeah, I believe I exist. Then you inquire into that source, from where your existence comes. They have become great devotees. One Mr. Prabhakar, who comes as a devout atheist into Bhagavan presence, he doesn't want to do namaskara and all. He has just come for his friend's sake. And he is taken over by Bhagavan in due course. And he writes a Shatakam or seven verses in praise of Bhagwan, as Bhagwan as the deity. How else can it be? One has been so abundantly blessed with all that can ever be given to a jiva. Now, how it can be ungrateful? Especially when there is a source so clearly from which it has come. When the first cause is right in front of him, how can you deny it? When the Ishvara himself is sitting in front, when not only this Purana holder, the one who has gone beyond this Purana is there. That is, this Purana is so humble, it is present within everyone. And the Rishi is the standing proof that there is Ishvara. And he is there right in front. Where is atheism? That atheist Prabhakar, he writes 7 shlokas of praise or something like that, if I am not wrong. And that is how strongly Bhagavan turns him around without asking him to leave his belief of atheism. He said, are you existing or not? From there we come to the area where some getting into the deep sleep area from modern thinkers is there. They enter to some extent. That is, we see some scientists like Feynman, like Carl Sagan, like Stephen Hawking. They all go into they breach the area of I think. That the I think which the philosophers have taken, which is quite serious. The I think, we can easily understand how that is the other of our every thought process. And that this is a truth. The first person thinking is a truth behind all thought processes. But Bhagavan goes beyond that, where I and thought are not there. Now let's see a little bit of those thinkers who have, let's say, somewhat come into the area of deep sleep, though not penetrated it totally. As I was saying, there are a few scientists whom I have come across, and of course Noam Chomsky is there, and he quotes a few other scientists of earlier, all of whom have gone into this understanding that the source of science, the source of scientific knowledge is I do not know. That is, there is a Feynman talk which I have forwarded to all of you, which is very interesting, where I'll just go into it briefly. I don't know whether I touched upon it in the last few sessions. He is a scientist who now is investigating, does science have this key to use scientific power to good or bad? And he says, no, there I come with a blank, that science does not have any way to guide a person to use it for, if the person is good, he uses science for good. If the person is bad, so the good and bad is in the individual. And that he learns on a visit to a Buddhist monastery in Hawaii, he says, where the chief monk says to him, I'll tell you something which you should not forget all your life. And Feynman says, I never forgot it. That the keys to the heaven are given to each individual. The same keys open the doors to hell also. That is, the good and the bad are inside us, inside each individual. So each individual can use the power. So science is one power. And then he extends this across. Education is one power. Education can be used for good and bad. Today we are aware of that. Communication, international communication for peace can be used for good and bad. We are aware of that, how media can be used either way. He says the silence of a person, the verbal silence, can be used for good or bad. That's, of course, I leave it to your imagination to how that can happen. It can happen. And he says this applies to all the powers. So none of the powers that you think of, including meaning of life, is free of this, that it is dependent on the individual and the way the individual has good and bad. Therefore, what to do? He explores how can science overcome this? How can the scientist overcome this? He says, beyond the good and bad, the science explores into knowledge and ignorance. And he says that when we keep the doors of ignorance open, that I do not know, then you are free of good and bad. Your creativity, you should not think how it is going to be applied. You have to keep the door of ignorance. I really do not know. That the individual cannot know what is good or bad and what is right or wrong, but awaits that source of knowledge with saying, I do not know. And that is the source of creativity, they say. That from that limitless ignorance, comes your relative knowledge, which we are ready to receive and give it to the world. They say, and of course, there is the study of Carl Jung into the area of the deep sleep, which comes in the form of the conscious and the subconscious. In the subconscious or the unconscious, as he calls it, there is the individual unconscious and the collective unconscious. The individual unconscious is our individual problems. What is the problem of Nanda Kumar? Now, the collective unconscious is, let's say, that which is common to all. He goes beyond the cultures, beyond the religions, and finds some common types of archetypes, common types of gods and devils present in all the cultures. And he says they are present in the collective unconscious. The beautiful thing he says is, to reach the collective unconscious, you have to let go of your personal individual nature. The individual unconscious you have to cross. Suppose we are undergoing old age, as all of us are bound to, and some of us like me are already undergoing. Now, I can take it as a personal problem. Why God is treating me like this, giving this problem or that problem? Or I can identify this with the collective, that ವಯೋಧಿಕ ಅನ್ನುವುದು ಎಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ ಬರುತ್ತೆ. The old age is something common to all living beings. Therefore, immediately there is a sharing of that problem. There is a cathartic feeling. There is a healing that happens immediately. The moment I drop my individual nature, fight with it individually, but go into the common, the collective unconscious. Of course, he says the collective unconscious consisting of those supports, the gods and the devils, is also a dream of the unconscious, he says, and beyond that lies the self. However, the problem with him also is that he wants his studies to be empirically applicable to day-to-day living, therefore restricts his self to human beings only. He expects that enquiry will take us beyond into the reality of self, but he stops there. He does the shadow work and integration of the self. That is somewhat let's say an investigation into the deep sleep. But Bhagavan doesn't stop anywhere there. The unconscious and the conscious, that division is not there. In a discussion with Chadwick will say that is not these major things that are happening, are they not happening in the universal consciousness? They are not happening in the individual consciousness, is it not? He will ask. Bhagavan says, who is now dividing consciousness as individual and universal? It is you. Therefore, unhesitatingly go beyond. Don't divide consciousness as collective and individual. Just inquire, for whom is this thought, for whom is this thought. You will go to that which is beyond, which is the spurana, and that spurana also will quieten into the self, which is the first cause of everything. So Bhagavan brings us to the first cause, the Atman, the self, by taking us beyond waking, dream, and deep sleep, absolutely. And that spurana, that self, is the adhara for the empirical living also. Therefore, we can take the surrender and Atma Vichara to all living beings, to all who are concerned, who are in modern day-to-day living, because that is the adhara for the philosophers, for the jurisprudence, for the way in which I use English now. All this is supported with the unfailing presence of this Purana and the Atman within us. Om Namo Bhagavate Shri Ramanaya. Let us sit for 15 minutes of Atma Vicharam to hold that Spurana and not ask anything from the Spurana. Namo Ramana. Namo Ramana Akka.
Namo Ramana. Prostrations to Ramana. Shining is the self in all beings. By the immense grace of the self manifest as Ramana, we have been meditating on the very first verse of the Ulladu Narpadu. After having completed the prayer verses, the two prayer verses, the first verse of Ulladu Narpadu, நாம் உலகம் காண்டலால் நானாவான் சக்தியுள ஓர் முதலை ஒப்பல் ஒரு தலையே சித்திரமும் பார்ப்பானும் சேர்ப்படமும் ஆருளியும் அத்தனையும் தானாம் அவன். And how Nandakumarji has taken us through this verse, he has focused for us on the or mudalam. Nanavan Shaktiyula or mudalai oppudal. We have to accept one cause, one first cause, mudalai, Bhagavan says. Nanavan Shaktiyula or mudalai. So that first cause, because what we identify as the first cause is the basis for everything. In this, there is one aspect, because here Muruganar Swami says that our predicament is such that we attribute many causes. We attribute our existence, our experiences to many causes, not or mudal. We do many causes. He says, Yattanayo sharbu. Yattanayo sarbu matrulave kulavenum. மெய்த்தகுண ஞானிகட்கு நின்னையாலால் மெய்த்தகுண சாதுக்கட்கு நின்னையலால் சார்பு வேறின்மை கண்டு. For those who are established in jnana, there is no support other than you. There is no support. So there is a first cause. Because if the mind gets integrated towards one point, that one cause, that one space, that one being, whatever we call that one, then alone can we get back to the source. Until the mind is divided into multiple areas, it is actually impossible for us to get back to the truth, to our being, to the source. So the clubbing together, which Nandakumarji has told earlier also, in this verse, Bhagavan is talking about the one cause. Now, if we look back actually at the prayer verses, also we find that Bhagavan has dealt with this one cause. In the first verse, he talks about it as the Ulladu, that which is, that is the one cause, to which he comes in the second half of this Chittiramum, Parpanum, Serpadamum, Aruliyum, Attanayum, Tanam, Avan. Here he says it is the Supreme, which is what Bhagavan talks about in the second prayer verse. He talks about Ishvara. Now today, Nandakumarji, he began with how the first cause may be designated as different aspects. It may be designated as the thinking faculty or thinking. I think, therefore I am. In fact, my professor, Dr. Ramaswamy, would say, Descartes has said, I think, therefore I am. He's called Descartes, and he puts the cart before the horse. That is to say, I am, therefore I think. How can it be I think, therefore I am? But that is also how it appears. That is how our anubhava seems to be. And in one sense, it is a very truthful approach. we are all very, very much dependent on, or believe we are dependent on, thinking for our existence. So we have Paul Brunton telling Bhagwan that if I get into that inquiry, into self-inquiry, if I get to a thought-free state, will I not become an idiot, he asks. If I stop thinking, will I not become an idiot? So to that extent, we are all dependent on thinking. This is highlighted by Descartes' philosophy and of course Kant also. And then from there, Nandakumarji took us to the point of not knowing. Because if I believe that my source is, that first cause is knowledge, then in the absence of knowledge, what happens to me? In the absence of anything that is to be known, what happens to me? That fear will always remain. The fear of the thought-free state will remain unless I am ready to enter into the realm of non-knowing, the tentative realm of non-knowing. And that is the beauty of self-inquiry, that it takes us to the threshold of not knowing by questioning the very one who knows. Who am I? When who am I, the query arises, I don't even know who I am. Forget about my not knowing anything else. So the supreme point, or the highest or the deepest point of not knowing happens in who am I? Who am I? So Bhagavan takes us to that end point in order to get us to the source, which is all enveloping, in which even the division of knowing and not knowing, knowledge and knower is not there. It is all enveloping. And if one gets to the point of its being all enveloping, unless one gets to the point of that divisionless experience, there is bound to be sorrow, there is bound to be limitation, there is bound to be incompleteness. And in a way, very sweetly, in the manifest aspect, Nandakumarji brought us to that. Attanayum Tanamavan, everything is included in that, by bringing Bhagwan's tenet, Pirarukivadu Tamakam Indra, which Shiva Prakasham Pillai has recorded in his Ramana Padamalai. When I give something to somebody else, whatever I give to somebody else, I give to myself. So the division ceases. In practice, the division ceases. Attanayum Tanam Avan. We may say that in the dreams state also, everything is I. That is to say, I can see how everything is I in the dream state, where all the manifestations of the dream are only my own mental projections. This I may accept. However, what Nandakumarji has pointed out to us today is that that does not complete the picture. So long as I am holding on to the manifest experience, there is always a division. Everything that is manifest is Ishvara. Who says that? Everything that is manifest is me. Who says that? So when I say that everything that is manifest is me, there is the subtle division of I as the perceiver and I as the perceived, and I am saying everything is me. That is, if one enters the realm, that absolute realm of zero identity through who am I, the point of not knowing anything, but with absolute awareness, then one enters into, one transcends this limitation of knowing and not knowing, the duality of knowing and not knowing. Even that duality, there is no one to say even that Attanayum Tanam Avan, that everything is for our understanding, that all is included in that Spurana. And that's why again and again we are reminded by Nandakumarji that the Spurana also merges into the source. The Attanayum Tanamavan recognition, when we recognize Attanayum, means everything, it includes not only the known, it includes not knowing. Attanayum, because everything, it includes the not knowing also, and the entirety is the self. This is the point to which Bhagavan is taking us in his immense grace in this verse. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya.
Namo Ramana. Namo Ramana to all.